Where things stand with that plan?
No, I mean, I've talked to both of the foreign ministers of France and the UK yesterday, and I explained to them sort of the events leading up to what you saw on Friday. Look, I think what's really important here is to understand the dynamic. The president is basically saying there's this horrible war. It's been going on for 3 years. It is a bloody stalemate, a meat grinder type war, and he wants it to end. How does it end? It's very simple. The only way it ends is if Vladimir Putin comes to a negotiating table. And right now, President Trump is the only person on earth who has any chance whatsoever of bringing him to a table to see what it is he would be willing to end the war on. Now, maybe their claims or what they want, their demands will be unreasonable. We don't know, but we have to bring him to the table. You're not going to bring him to the table if you're calling him names, if you're being antagonistic. That's just the president's instincts from years and years and years of putting together deals as someone who's in business. And that's the only goal here.
Let me just stop you there for 1 second.
Why is it a war with no end in sight?
Why is it okay to call President Zelensky a dictator, but not, as you say, call Vladimir Putin names?
Boom. Knocked it out of the park. Trump says the most embarrassing stuff ever on foreign policy. Zelensky a dictator. He refused to call Putin not a dictator. I would have liked for Stephanopoulos to bring that up too. But yeah, Rubio's got a tough job to do here. He's got to defend Trump and his foreign policy takes and his ridiculous misunderstanding of government and the way that policy works, and his idiocy in believing that Zelensky is a dictator. And why do we have to treat Putin with kid gloves but go super harsh on Zelensky, super unnecessarily harsh? Let's see if he's going to give a good answer.
Listen, we've spent 3 years calling Vladimir Putin names. That's not the point. The point that we're at now is we're trying to get the man to a table, the Russians. And I've said from the very beginning, maybe they don't want a deal either. We don't know.
He did not answer the question. He didn't answer why we get to call Zelensky a dictator, but why we can't call Putin names. And at the end of the day, it's because the Trump administration is the Putin defense administration. They defend Putin no matter what. They'll criticize other aspects of Russia. I mean, they'll criticize communism, that's for darn sure. But yeah, they go all in against Zelensky. They scrutinize everything he does in order to call him an authoritarian, a dictator. But they'll totally look the other way when it comes to Putin. You know, Tucker Carlson, of course, interviewed Putin, went to Russia and did Russian propaganda, going around their store being like, look how nice this is, guys. So, yeah, it's not really all that surprising that this is what the Republican Party and the hard right movement in America has become. I also feel like 10 years ago, Marco Rubio would be singing a different tune than what he's singing right now. This is pretty weird, and it just seems like it's part of the Trumpian grift.
But we haven't talked to them in 3 years. But maybe they do. The point is, do we want to make... I would ask everybody this. If there are no negotiations, what is the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war, in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine? Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out. Most don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death, another year of destruction, then maybe Putin will be ready to negotiate at that point. That doesn't sound like a good plan to me, and it certainly is not a plan the president's on board with.
It's not just about getting people to the table, it's about keeping agreements that are made. And that was one of the points that President Zelensky was making in the Oval Office on Friday, is that Vladimir Putin has not kept the agreements that were made in the past. Wasn't he right about that?
But what is moving forward is the question, not in the past. No one here is claiming Vladimir Putin is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize this year, or that he should be the man of the year of the Humanitarian Association. What we're arguing here is he has a very large country. They're in full war footing. They're cranking out weapons now at a war footing pace, and we need to figure out, is there a way to get them to stop the war? And the only way you're going to do that is to get Russians engaged in negotiations, something the Europeans haven't been able to do, the Biden administration wasn't able to do or didn't even try. That's the goal here. It's that simple. Can we try to sit with them and figure out whether there's anything, what are the Russians' demands, under what conditions would the Russians be willing to stop this war? And as I said, we don't know what those are because we haven't talked to them in 3 years. That's the singular goal here, is to try to bring about an end to this conflict, and it begins by getting them to the table. Ultimately, like any truce, like any peace agreement anywhere in the world, those things will have to be enforced, they'll have to be enduring, there'll have to be safeguards put in place. Everybody understands that. But it begins with the first step, and that is engaging them to see if it's even possible. Because if it's...
Why do we have to focus on what Russians want after 3 years and not on what Ukrainians want? Interesting.
Not possible, then what we're looking at is a protracted stalemate with thousands of people dying, billions of dollars pouring in, and more death and destruction. And that's not something the president wants to be a part of. He's made it very clear.
Aren't those talks feasible only if the United States is willing to also provide security guarantees to Ukraine? That was the point that President Zelensky was also making in the Oval Office.
Well, the security guarantees, which I actually like to call deterrence, is all contingent upon there being a peace. Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace. We don't even know if the peace is possible. And this was understood by the Ukrainians. It was explained to them repeatedly. And that is, here's our strategy. We're trying to get Putin to a negotiating table. Let's not everyone knows the history here, the back and forth. We understand that. We all understand that. But the question now is, can we get them to a table to negotiate? That's our goal. Don't do anything to disrupt that. And that's what Zelensky did, unfortunately, is he found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president when the When the vice president says the goal here is diplomacy, he immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy? So we all understand, okay, that Putin is not going to be an easy negotiator in this regard. We all get that. But we have to start the process to see if something is even possible. And I honestly am puzzled. I just don't understand. The Biden administration berated Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, put all kinds of conditions and pressure on them to try to get a ceasefire. In this particular case, we've been nice by comparison. And all we're trying to do here is figure out whether a peace is possible. All these other things that people keep bringing up, that'll have to be a part of a negotiation. Right now, there is no negotiation. Shouldn't we at least try to see if there is a way to end this war in a way that's acceptable to both sides and is enduring and sustainable? How is that a bad thing? I really am puzzled why anyone thinks that trying to be a peacemaker is a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it's Donald Trump trying to do it. When it's President Trump, it's absurd to me.
Well, even some of your Republican allies are puzzled by the steps that President Trump has taken to placate Vladimir Putin. I want to bring up a...
Boom. Boom. Lisa Murkowski calling Trump out, saying the way he's handling this, cozying up to Putin, makes her sick to her stomach. We covered that. As for Rubio's victim complex on behalf of Trump, people hold Trump to a lower standard, not a higher standard. People give him credit for stuff that he doesn't even deserve credit for. And people criticize other people for stuff that Trump does all the time, and they don't criticize Trump for it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, please like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. This has been the more is the merrier. Thank you so much for watching. I'll speak to you in my next video.